Hi everybody, welcome back to the cabin. I want to talk about how I situated this cabin on this property and why I did that. If you look in behind me, down in the valley here, that's north, which it wasn't the ideal property for that reason for me when we were looking for property, because I like a property that has a gentle slope or even a steep slope in some places to the south. So because in the winter we have much shorter daylight hours and the sun is low on the horizons, so you want to take advantage of that for light and heat. So generally I would put all of the living areas kind of facing south, and what that also does then in the summer when the sun is more directly overhead, we have long days up here and quite warm and humid. The sun's coming up and over east to west and sort of to the north. So if the biggest windows are facing south, the sun's not shining in and heating up that space. And of course, it's nice to have that view as well, so the view out to the nicest part of the property. I would say besides the pond up in the south end where I'm going to build that next cabin, where I can do that because the view is facing south, this is probably the nicest part of the property with the nicest view, because we have the stream running down through there and there's a lot of wildlife that uses that area. And we thought that would be nice to take advantage of this as a viewing platform to be able to look down. And sure enough, I've seen ducks down there, I've seen herons, geese, sandhill cranes, and of course this bear that's now hanging out there. And I know deer and moose have walked through there since I've started building this cabin, so I expect to see them, especially in the winter as well, or soon when the leaves are down. Okay, so you can see behind me the cabin is on a bit of an angle because the camera is, but the cabin is situated almost exactly north-south. The door and this window are facing south, and the porch area where we're going to sit out looking out at the woods and the fire is facing south also. So in the winter, the prevailing winds generally come from the northwest over here, especially with this valley, and then there's a big beaver meadow, and it's a beaver pond when they flood it. So the wind can pick up across there and come up this hill and buffet this side of the cabin. So by facing south, this porch being south, we're likely to sit in there during the winter. So get the benefits of the warmth of the sun and the light without getting hit with these winds. That's why you see the window here and the door here, so that we're facing south, and also the snows as they come across are not going to accumulate at that door because the overhang is going to protect it. We'll see how the snow comes in. Might even put more of a wall right here, or firewood pile or something to block the snow from coming in. Now the window that I'm putting in right here is for cross ventilation and a view to the west. So the sun sets over there this time of year. Again, as the leaves are falling, the sun can shine in there and light up the cabin in the afternoon when we want the heat. But in the summer, there's enough canopy that that hot afternoon sun is not shining in and actually heating the cabin up too much. That window is also operating, so when we need a cross breeze to clear out smoke, or just for comfort to get a nice breeze through the cabin, open that window up and open that window up, and we'll get a nice cross breeze coming right through the cabin. So that east window that's going to be right here in the middle, that window is operating as well, so it's going to give ventilation. It's also over the kitchen. I'm going to try to elevate it high enough that it's over the kitchen counters, so that you have natural light shining right in on the counter surface where you're working for prep area without having to use artificial light. So this is where the back deck's going to be, right here. So of course you've seen this view a few times. That's the water. The stream comes all the way along the property, starts off in that pond up in the corner, comes along the bottom of the property, and then cuts across the north here. So there's a beaver dam right there, an old one, and then there's another one down at the other end of the beaver meadow. When the beavers are here, they back up those two dams and they create bigger ponds. So I can control the water flow. I can actually control the size and depth of this pond right here just by adjusting the branches in the top of that dam. And I've done that a few times already. So if you watched the very first video I made up here at the cabin where I started clearing the lot, it might have been the wolves one, or the one maybe prior to that or just after that, I'm not sure. Anyway, from this spring, down in the valley was where we really wanted to build the cabin first, right at the base of this hill, but it was just too wet. Hard to get building materials down there. Mostly the wetness, but also that those huge hemlock trees, the roots are the only thing holding that ground up. And if I started digging into that, I was going to upset the roots and possibly create an unstable root system for that tree, and it would possibly fall over, that big hemlock. Also some big hemlocks here and that big maple, the nice branched one. A little bit concerned about that falling down onto the cabin eventually, so it just wasn't viable. Okay, so now the camera's sitting on the deck where the canoe is right now. In behind me is that ridge that I was talking about that I keep seeing wildlife on. So the bear this morning was right down on that ridge, right there in that clearing. So that was one of the other reasons I put it here. So if I am going to harvest game, I can actually sit right here at the cabin and I can shoot down into that valley or this valley and harvest an animal from a distance without walking down into there and disturbing the area too much. So I really like this cabin being situated right on this point of high ground like that for that reason. Also to get it out of the wet. It still has good sun exposure to the south, where down in that valley would not have, especially in the winter. That snow took forever to melt there in the spring because the sun doesn't hit it. So here's the deck, so we're sitting up here looking down into the valley to the north. Nice thing about this also in the summer, that hot sun might be beating down on the east and west sides, but this north side is going to be fairly well protected because I'm going to put an overhang above this porch as well, sort of a covered deck. And in behind me here will be a picture window that you can sit inside, actually look out that window and see the view. Of course, one of the other major considerations is access to water for drinking, cooking, and cleaning. So here we want to be as close to that water source as possible, without encroaching on it so closely that there's a risk of flood. The ground near a water course like that, of course, is saturated as back as far as the water table. So you want to get up above that water table and above the highest water table. So up here on this platform, on this elevation here, we're well above that water table. Another consideration, if it was a shorter term camp, or if you were building the cabin with materials from the property and the property had enough building materials on it, you'd want to situate the cabin as close to the major source of trees as you possibly could, if that's an option. But I'd rather move logs and be closer to the water than build a cabin where there's lots of logs, say a spruce or a cedar grove or something, and then have to travel to get my water every day. And then one of the other considerations is firewoods. So again, that's something you need pretty well every day when you're living self-reliant lifestyle, because you don't have electricity for heat and for cooking. So even in the summer when you don't necessarily need the heat, you do need the wood fuel for cooking. So you don't want to have to travel too far, but again, water would be number one consideration for me. Sun orientation and safety, so prevailing winds, you want to try to get sheltered from prevailing winds, and you want to avoid trees that can fall on the cabin. Now I do have trees close to this cabin, but I did change the location based on which way the trees were leaning. So got a great big maple right here that's leaning quite heavily. That's going to miss the cabin when it does go. There's no way that's coming over even in a heavy wind. It's too big and too heavy, so it's going to fall that way. This hemlock, that hemlock, and that maple, same thing. They're going to fall that way when they do fall. So I'm safe here. I'm not concerned about trees. So that's it. That's how I sited this cabin. If you want to go back to see how I situated the cabin on my friend's property, check out the videos from March and April of this year. And don't forget to tune back in here to see me complete the cabin, but also to see what it looks like in the winter. I think that how it's situated is going to be that much more important in the winter, and I'm looking forward to seeing that myself. So I hope you tune into that, not only to see the cabin finished, but beyond that, and see how I live in it and how we settle in here in the winter. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed that one, and I look forward to seeing you on Fridays for the regular cabin series. Thanks a lot.